Professor Brenberg joining us right now, the chair of the program in Business and Finance at the King's College in Manhattan. Good to see you, Brian.
Good to be back.
So the big economic news of the week is the jobs report for March, rather. It comes out Friday. 180,000 new payroll jobs have been created. That's the expectation, with the unemployment rate of 4.7%. So those are the expectations.
Yeah.
Whatever we get, is that number going to be overshadowed by Washington policy?
Well, it has been in the past several months. I don't think it's going to be this month because the policy environment is so murky. Nobody's expecting anything in the near term on tax reform, health care reform. Those are up in the air. So I think traders are actually watching these numbers more closely than they have in a while to see what's going on in the real economy. Corporate earnings, economic numbers are going to drive valuations here. And so I think that's what you're even seeing in the market this week with sort of the back and forth. We got some auto numbers yesterday that weren't great, some manufacturing numbers that were okay. And so that's why you're seeing these mixed results.
Well, we've already seen President Trump already working hard. He has this jobs initiative. He's had one company after another bring back jobs right here in the States. We'll see whether or not that gets reflected and how the Fed might digest this.
Yeah, and the Fed minutes come out tomorrow, so we're going to see some information on what they were thinking with the last interest rate hike. But really going forward, I do think investors are going to pay attention to economic data. They're just not going to be able to put their faith in the policy process. Like we have a divided Washington, even with Republicans in power. And so now it comes back to what's going on in the real economy. So I do expect this to be a pretty big week.
And he's a jobs president.
And he is. And that's what people care about the most. I mean, time and again, the polls say Americans want the president to help create jobs. So they're going to be looking at that. Speaking
of foreign policy, President Trump is meeting with the Chinese president later this week. Do you expect anything to come of that?
Potentially, it could be a very big meeting. He's pressing the president on North Korea, which is it's a big issue in foreign policy. He's been talking about trade and mixing trade with that. The question is, how tough will he talk on trade? What will he focus on? He's talked about trade deficits the past few weeks. We'll see if he goes there. The markets are going to be watching that because investors are very nervous about trade protectionism, a trade war. If he's going to go down that route, they want to make sure that they're not going to get a whiff of, uh-oh, here comes tariffs and retaliatory tariffs.
So do you think he'll tread lightly on those topics, or?
I do think he's going to be careful on this one. He's going to mention trade, he's going to talk about trade, but I do think he's going to tread carefully when he's talking about tariffs or any really hard policy moves.
Got it. Professor Brenberg from the King's College right here in New York City, thank you so much for your time this morning.